There are moments in a courtroom when the air feels heavier than the walls can hold. Moments when a single refusal, a single sentence, a single choice reveals more about a person than any file ever could. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to see how far this conversation is reaching. The first sound that morning was the firm voice of the bailiff calling for everyone to rise. Seats shifted. Shoes scuffed against the floor. People stood. Everyone except the man in the tailored suit at the defendant's table. He sat as if the world owed him stillness. Preston Hale, 38, wealthy, polished, comfortable in the way that only lifelong privilege could make someone comfortable. His arms folded across his chest, his chin angled upward, as though even gravity should respect him. "I am not standing for some small-town judge," he muttered, loud enough for half the room to hear. "I pay more in taxes than he earns." The words hovered in the air like a challenge, sharp and deliberate. Officer Mendes tried again. "Sir, when the judge enters, you stand." "That is the rule." "Everything is optional," Preston said. "When you have enough money." The bailiff's jaw tightened. He had seen arrogance before, but rarely this cleanly delivered, this practiced, this proud. The doors opened, and Judge Frank Caprio walked to the bench with his usual calm presence. He paused, watching the room, watching the man who had chosen to remain seated. It was not the first time someone had entered his courtroom without respect. But something about this felt different. There was intention in the defiance, almost a performance. What Preston did not know, what he could not imagine, was that the man he had nearly hit with his Mercedes 3 weeks earlier was not simply an elderly pedestrian. He was a veteran whose life had intersected with Preston's in a way that would break. Something opened before the day was over. The clerk began reading the case number. The tension in the room felt like a held breath. "Case number 2026-TR4419, she announced. "The City of Providence versus Preston William Hale." The charges were read one by one. Reckless driving, harassment, willful disregard for pedestrian safety, contempt of court. "I am not responding to charges read by a clerk," Preston said, still seated. "My lawyers handle this kind of thing." Judge Caprio settled into his chair, hands folded gently. "Mr. Hale," he said, "you are already in contempt of court for refusing to stand. Would you like to add to that, or would you like to behave like a civilized adult?" Preston exhaled dramatically. "I would like to know why I am even here. This is a waste of my time." The judge made a quiet note. Defendant remained seated. Contempt recorded. The spectators watched, silent, sensing that something unusual was unfolding. Preston's file sat on the bench, thicker than most. No formal convictions, but a collection of complaints that had been settled quietly. His behavior toward employees, his treatment of service workers, stories whispered, never fully pursued because money had a way of softening consequences. "Mr. Hale," Judge Caprio said, "I have footage from a parking lot camera, an officer's report, a witness voicemail, and a text message submitted as evidence. Would you like to explain what occurred on September 19th? "Nothing occurred," Preston replied. "Some old man was crawling across the lot. I honked. He overreacted. According to the footage, your vehicle came within a very small distance of striking him. He should have moved faster. If people cannot walk properly, they should stay home. Simple." The judge studied him carefully. There was arrogance, yes, but beneath it was something smaller, something hollow, something learned rather than earned. "Let me ask you," the judge said. "When you refused to stand this morning, what exactly did you expect to happen?" "I thought you would understand that I am not like the usual people who come in here," Preston said. "I do not need to follow the same rules." "And why is that?" "Because I employ hundreds." One, donate large sums. I build things. I matter. And Harold Watkins does not? The judge asterisk who? The man you nearly struck? Asterisk Preston waved a hand dismissively. Old people should not walk through parking lots if they cannot move. A clerk stepped forward and handed the judge a printed screenshot. He read it aloud. Some old guy slowed me down today, the message said. Almost clipped him. Court's bout of money. Lawyers will make this disappear by next week. The smirk slipped off Preston's face. That was a private message. He said it was submitted as evidence, the judge replied. Is this your view of the courts? That money decides everything? Preston said nothing. Officer Julian Baker took the stand next. He described the scene, an elderly veteran leaning against a parked car, shaken. The driver still there, irritated that his reserved space was occupied. The dismissive comments. The insults. The coldness. He said, Officer Baker testified. If the man cannot move, he should not be in public. The room fell still. And did he acknowledge coming close to hitting him? The judge asked, asterisk, yes, the officer replied. He said, I wish I had hit him. It would have taught him to move faster. People in the gallery shifted uncomfortably. Even Preston's posture changed. His confidence dulled around the edges. Then the judge turned to the small, quiet figure sitting in the front row. Mr. Watkins, he said gently. If you would like to speak, you may. The elderly veteran rose slowly, supporting himself with a cane. His movements were careful, deliberate. Years of old injuries had shaped the way he carried himself. His face held patience, not anger. Your Honor, he began, his voice steady, I do not walk fast. I have not walked fast since the late 60s. I do what I can, and sometimes what I can do is not enough for people in a hurry. He described the moment in the parking lot. The feeling of a car rushing toward him. The fear, the helplessness. The knowledge that his body could not respond the way his mind wanted it to. I thought that might be my last moment, he said softly. Not in a foreign country, not during war, but in a parking lot in my own city. Preston yawned, loudly enough for people to hear. A disrespectful sound that clashed painfully against the veteran's dignity. A voicemail played next. A witness describing what she saw. The speed. The cane. The fear. The shouting from the driver's window. The judge looked at Preston again. Did you shout that phrase at him? Preston shrugged weakly. I do not remember. Mr. Watkins served this nation, the judge said, defending your freedom to be in a hurry. Does that matter to you? Everyone has a story, Preston muttered. That does not make him special. The room's temperature seemed to drop. The judge shifted the tone. Asterisk. You said your family donates to veterans' causes. Why is that? Preston straightened, prepared to sound impressive. He spoke about the Hale Foundation. The donations, he said, were important to my father. And do you know why? Preston faltered. He saw difficult things. It changed him. The clerk stepped forward with another note. The judge read it aloud. The foundation's largest grant supported the Providence Veterans Rehabilitation Center. The primary beneficiary of that center's services was Harold Watkins. The grant had been personally established by Preston's father, and for years, without telling his family, he visited Harold in private. Preston stared at the judge as though hearing a language he had never learned. My father did what? The judge continued quietly, the room silent enough to hear breaths. In 1968, your father was a young soldier who believed he would not survive. Mr. Watkins saved him. He stayed with him. He refused to leave him behind. The words landed like weight. Everything you inherited, the judge said, exists because this man refused to abandon your father. Aston blinked rapidly. His arrogance crumbled. revealing something painfully human beneath it. The judge let the truth settle. What followed was transformation, slow and uncomfortable. Weeks of community service, conversations that reshaped the way Preston understood the world, learning the stories behind the scars, discovering the father he never fully knew. Finding humility in rooms filled with courage became weeks. Weeks became months. By the time Preston returned for his follow-up hearing, he was not a new man. But he was undeniably different. He stood without being asked. He answered with respect. He volunteered even after his hours were complete in the board of the Veterans Center. He helped expand programs he once did not know existed. When Harold Watkins approached the bench to speak, the room leaned in. Your Honor, Harold said softly, this young man has changed. I have seen it with my own eyes. His father once asked me what I wanted in return for saving him. I told him I wanted him to raise good children. He feared he had failed. Harold placed a hand on Preston's shoulder, but he did not. Not anymore. Preston lowered his head. Overwhelmed. The judge delivered his closing remarks with the kind of compassion that made his courtroom legendary. What happened next became one of those moments people shared across the world. A reminder that dignity still mattered, that humility could be learned, that justice, when tempered with compassion, could transform rather than simply punish.